All right, we just finished our cloud creature, which was our first compositing project where we created something wholly original from other people's pixels, right? And now we're going to start to learn how to use those layers and those assets in a different way. And that is to start animating. The first step for telling a story is to figure out what the setting is and then what actions happen. And I want you to do this in a sketchbook with 9 frames, so 3 square frames stacked on top of each other, 3 on 3. And in this you see I start with an establishing shot which sets a scene, and then I have an action happening, and the action is a cloud comes and strikes this tree with lightning. The tree sets fire, it burns down, and then it grows back up, and then it starts where it ends where it started. So this creates what's called a loop, a continuous cycle animation, but within the animation I'm using components that I'd composited. So this is a landscape that I composited, and even though I added the tree for the animation, I am showing a transformation happening. So I didn't actually take the time to show the tree burning and all of that. The lightning is the transformation. The weather changes and then goes back to normal. And it's one thing to animate it, it's another thing, or it's one thing to storyboard it, it's another thing to actually build the seams in between so that you get that change happening. So that's what we're trying to do. That was animating, let's say, your fantasy landscape. This would be an example of animating your creature or part of your creature, right? I decided to turn it into a little Firefox ad. It's not enough just to make your creature move. You need to have a transformation happen. Right. Here's one where I use my creature design and then also my cloud. It's transformed into the cloud. This is what happens with all of your digital information. And then to make it a loop, I just reversed the animation. So there's lots of different ways you can approach this. Here's one with a creature who metamorphosizes. He's like this volcano creature, and he erupts. Boom. So on and so on. Here, this one got pretty ambitious, using the fantasy landscape, animating the character, animating the weather, showing the transformation. And so you can have fun with it. And all of that can be shown, and then it resets. All of that can be shown in just 9 frames. So you're only drawing what are called the keyframes. The big moments that need to happen. You'll be animating a lot of little moments in between. But this is how your story needs to make sense. And we're also going to turn in a cleaned up version of the storyboard, which is good for a print portfolio. Because a GIF animation doesn't work so well in a print portfolio. All right, so that's the project. And that will be our last compositing project. It really shows a mastery of layers. It really shows an understanding of Photoshop if you can do all these things, and there's lots of ways for it to go wrong. So we're going to try to keep it pretty simple. My only requirements are that you show some sort of transformation and that you use something that you've created before. So I'm going to sketch out my idea. I haven't thought about this much, so I use sketching to think, and that's not a bad way to go. So I've got my sketchbook. I'm going to draw 9 square panels. They don't need to be perfect squares. 3 up and 3 across. We're using a square because it's the most versatile storytelling composition shape. You can just think of it like you're animating for an old TV set. If you have good reason to use something other than a square, sketch it out, we can talk about it. It's not that important to me that they're squares. Extend my sketchbook size a little bit here. And notice that I'm leaving some space in between the squares. That's very important for storyboards. So you can write some notes, some ideas as they come to you. All right, so I've got this creature that's got kind of a rock shell, and I've got a landscape that is a desert scene. So my thinking is I want to show the landscape. So my first panel is what you call an establishing shot. Okay? And that is shortened to EST. And that establishes the setting. So this is going to be a desert. Then I move very quickly into introducing my character. My character is going to be hiding as this rock. So the rock's going to vibrate a little bit in this setting. And maybe his head will pop out. Hello. So he's like a turtle. And then I just go through actions. So my action is coming out of the shell. So like a hermit crab, he's going to get up, he's going to stretch his legs, his claw, come out of the shell. Same setting. Setting hasn't changed. Okay, now he's going to walk, so the action changes. He's going to walk this way. And then he's going to, let's see, shrink back in shell. So that's a new action. Again, I'm just making this up as I go. I can modify it, that's why it's a sketch. I can draw it really loosely. So now he's going back into his shell. Little arrows can help. The setting hasn't changed. He didn't walk that far, right? He just moved from that end to this end. And now he's going to roll back. Ooh. Counterclockwise. New action. So each time I have a new action, I write act. Short for action. Rolls back. Into place. I have some little dust clouds, so I might make notes. Dust. Maybe the rolling causes a lot of dust. Shuffles a lot of dust. And I think I probably want to show him going in to his shell all throughout. So little parts of him are still showing. Until here. And we start back where we began, because I want this to be a loop, which isn't required, but is nice. So it resets. To start. Okay, do I have a transformation? The transformation is happening to my character. He goes from a rock, comes out of his shell, reveals himself, moves, rolls, goes back. Do I have a transformation of the setting? No, not at all. Not so far. If I wanted one, I could design one, put it in. I'm not going to try to be overly ambitious this time. You can look at the last set of video demos for that one. Am I using something I've designed before? Yes. And am I going to make it work as a loop? Yes, it's going to feel like this poor little creature is always trying to get somewhere but never can, keeps rolling back. All right, so good. I'm going to save that as my sketch, as a JPEG. But let's think about how this is actually telling a story. You need 3 things to tell a story visually. The first is a character, right? So what is a character? Character can be anything that you tell the story through. It doesn't need to be a living thing. There'll be some space for notes here. So 3 things to tell a story. And we want to tell a narrative here. So you have to decide on what these 3 things are going to be before you sketch. First is the character. I am going to use my creature, but you might use a tree, you might use a cloud, you might use a paperclip. As long as you're telling the story through it. That character is the thing that we, as the audience, understand the story through. So let's just say he wasn't a creature at all. Let's just say it was a rock, but that rock blew across with the wind and then rolled back. That's still a character. It's the thing that changes through the story or experiences the changes. I wish I could write faster with the stylus. Through the story. All right. Number 2, you need a setting. Now the nice thing about that is that an audience is hungry for a setting. So even if it's empty, even if it's just blank white, you are establishing a setting through the choices you make. I think of the first Matrix movie. They go into the construct, and it's just this empty space, and then they start loading things into it. It's like a video game, empty programming bay, and as soon as you add something, it's now an established setting. So no matter what, even if I didn't have this background behind, which is the setting, because he looks like a desert creature in a rock, you would assume that he's outside, with other rocks. Or if your character has a scarf, you're going to assume they're outside and it's cold. So just realize what the setting is, even if it's just implied, and how that affects what happens. You can also make your story all about your setting and just pick a character element from your setting, like a tree getting hit by lightning, right? That's called a dynamic setting because it changes. Number 3, to tell a story, you need the illusion of time passing. And that's why this is an animated project. We are not performing it. We are not actually making something take time. Instead, we are showing an illusion of time passing through sequential imaging. So in the storyboard, it's like a comic book. Every time you cross over this border from one keyframe into another, time is passing. Sometimes a lot of time, sometimes a little bit of time. It depends on what story you're telling. This more seamless illusion of time passing will be when we actually animate them and play those different images at a different time signature. And that appears like it's moving, but it's not going to be as perfectly seamed as when we see something on TV, because for animation that's 24 frames per second, and for film that's like 36 frames a second. So instead, we're going to be doing a lower frame rate so it works online. And so it's a little choppy, but it can still tell a pretty effective story. All right, and we can still have as much fun with it. So that is the goal. You want to come to class with your plan in motion and then an idea of how to get those assets. And you are allowed to bring in outside stuff as well as what you created. Okay, that's it.